Wanna talk? So let's talk. Yeah. Talk. You wanna talk? You gotta talk, you need to talk. News talk.
I talk, you talk to Solomon. I talk, you talk to Solomon. Yeah, let's talk to Solomon. Talk to Solomon.
You gotta talk, you wanna talk.
Welcome back to Talk to Solomon, where our guest is Dr. Alan Keyes, and of course our co-host is Brent Johnson of the Global Freedom Report, freedomradio.us. Alan, let me ask you if you've heard that now in Spain it is illegal to abort if an ape is pregnant, but it's legal to abort if a woman is pregnant. Is it
Well,
me?
that I can say that I have heard it only because I read it in the briefing today that y'all sent around about the program, giving me a little heads up on some of the stories that would be dealt with today. I had not seen that one before. Missed it, I guess, entirely. Though in this age of unreason, I can't say that it shocks me too much to find that a government committed as Spain's now is to this whole abortion regime and other things that clearly abandon God-endowed right, would then be going down a road in which they're making the decision entirely based on the preference of some I don't know group that now has influence with the Spanish government and wants us to be more humane toward the offspring of apes than we are toward the offspring of human beings?
Yes, what is it? They say there's nothing more savage and inhuman than abortion on a monkey. But it doesn't seem to be savage and inhuman on a woman.
That doesn't make sense, Dan, because the very word inhuman suggests that you're doing something that's not compatible with humanity, right? And if you do something that's not compatible with humanity to an ape, somebody might turn to you and say, but this is not a human being I'm dealing with here, so how is it inhuman? It is more, I don't know, in ape-like or in simian, or I don't know what you describe it as, but not inhuman.
Well, how about
so in
Democrat?
You say inhuman, and then you refuse to apply it to wrongs that are done to human beings and that degrade and violate the nature of human beings. This is literally nonsense. You know that.
Well, it's I think a marker for insanity. Brent?
Yes, that's exactly what I was going to say. This is insane. Nonsense seems to be a little bit too light a phrase, Alan. You'll forgive me.
Okay,
and it is nonsense. But when nonsense is taken as serious reality, that's when it becomes insanity. And that's what you have going on. You've got this global, politically correct asylum that houses as its residents most of the world's politicians and a good chunk of the world's people. And they're just plain crazy. I don't know if there's anything else to be said about it. I'm sure they couched it under some kind of endangered species protection, but that's irrelevant. If you're going to say abortion is bad, then abortion is bad on humans. If you're not going to allow it on an animal,
I think that what we need to talk about here,
humans. I mean, it's just crazy.
We need to talk about that. To devalue human life is essential to control human beings. Would you agree, Alan?
Well, I think that's very true, though in an odd kind of way. Then I was just sitting here. Now, this is partly just facetious, obviously, and I hesitate usually to make facetious remarks because in our crazy world, somebody's bound to take it seriously. But you do realize that insofar as they establish a higher standard of treatment for animals than for human beings, then as they degrade our status so that we are to be treated no better than animals, we might at least get to the point where we could say, well, don't treat us any worse than you treat them. It is literally. I accept Brandt's admonition because it's crazy. It's crazy in the literal sense. It's crazy in the sense of insane. Yet, of course, given its moral consequences, it goes beyond that. And when you are pushing people over a cliff of such insanity on purpose, then I think they are acting crazy and accepting crazy things, but you are just plain evil.
All right, let's go to something that is the same but different. The UN is taking up an issue of atheists being discriminated against around the world. Now, they're not talking about the fact that Christians are discriminated against around the world, but atheists, people who, whatever they believe, they don't believe in God. And whenever I go on Twitter, make a comment about atheists, I actually comment on this story just saying atheists are being discriminated against. My tweet said, atheists complain of discrimination around the world, but wait until they meet God. And the response from an atheist was, with his 12 followers, was, what God? I didn't respond. There's no need to respond. I'll start with you, Brent.
Well, I think this is an interesting story in that I haven't heard this one before. Very little surprises me these days, but I haven't heard this one before, that we're now going to have a campaign against discrimination against atheists. Now, what's been brought out is there are some countries where being an atheist actually can get you the death penalty. You can be killed for being an atheist. Theocracies and such. And those extremes are being used to promote this discrimination against atheists. I'm fond of reminding people that we all discriminate. Every one of us discriminates. I mean, Stan, did you look up your wife's name and pick her out of a phone book arbitrarily?
Of course not.
Did you?
No.
No. Oh, so in other words, you discriminated. You didn't just randomly select a woman and marry her. You discriminated. We discriminate all the time. Yet, what the politicians have done is they've used discrimination as an arrow, if you will, and they target certain groups or people with the discrimination arrow and make an issue of it. The truth of the matter is, humans discriminate. It's appropriate for us to discriminate. We get to choose who we will have in our lives and who we won't have in our lives. If we don't want to have atheists in our lives, we have every right to exclude atheists from our lives. And citing certain countries that make atheism a capital offense, is designed to make all of us feel like we're not supposed to discriminate against them in any sense of the word. And I think that's another form of insanity, that we all discriminate all the time, and it's appropriate. Your character is determined in part by how you discriminate. Me, I don't have liars around me. I just, if somebody's a liar, they just don't hang around in my inner circle because I don't have them there, because I expose them. So I discriminate against liars. I'm proud of that. I make no apology for that. And the end result is I don't have a lot of liars in my life. And so, people discriminate and should discriminate all the time. And I think that we need to get off this attitude that somehow any kind of discrimination is automatically wrong. And I'm not saying go out there and engage in racial discrimination or sexual discrimination. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that we all discriminate, and it's appropriate that we do. Don't let the politicians take that protective device that every one of us has and turn it into something that somehow is supposed to be bad.
Alan?
It's not bad. There may be extremists who make it bad, but it's not bad.
I actually think that Brent has covered it pretty well. I think that we have established now a kind of regime of actually thought control is what they're attempting, in which you are supposed to eliminate discrimination. And discrimination turns out to be anything that you not only do or say, but think and hold and believe that is going to be offensive to somebody else or make them feel uncomfortable or make them feel left out. Do you realize what you are getting us into when you have allowed that to be the rubric under which you are going to start going after people because they're discriminating? And what you're essentially doing is you are shrinking the sphere of all human liberty, including whatever might be the liberty of thought. But you're also, of course, destroying the rights of conscience, because if you have an opinion that X is immoral, such as Brad just expressed about liars, well, how dare you take a stand against liars? You know, I know some liars, and they're very nice people. Some of the best people and greatest people contributing to this or that field of endeavor have been liars, and so forth and so on. And liars shouldn't be made to feel uncomfortable just because they're lying all the time and so forth. It sounds ridiculous when you say it, but this is where we're getting to. And we're getting there because at the end of the day, once you have started to say that whatever makes folks uncomfortable is unjust discrimination, what you are doing is you're removing the rule of reason as the basis for discriminating. In the context, for instance, of the doctrine of human natural rights that come from God and that can be reasoned out according to basic obligations that are part of our nature toward one another, you actually put a limit on discrimination by making it rational so that you can justify certain kinds of discrimination and not others. What they're doing is they're throwing all that away. And the question of what constitutes discrimination has nothing to do with the integrity of thought, the discipline of logic, the relevance to truth, or anything like that. It just has to do with how people feel. And if you make them feel badly, then we're going to stop you from doing whatever you're doing. And not only that, but if you look at what's going on with homosexuality, we're going to force you to accept and deal with and treat with equitable equanimity even things that you in conscience abhor. So Brant, none of this stuff about not dealing with liars, because that's unjust discrimination. And if a liar comes in and wants to become your insurance broker, you have no right to discriminate against him. You understand that? If he comes to your newspaper
Yes,
and
sir.
he's a liar and he wants to become a reporter, you not only have no right to discriminate against him, but you better not say anything nasty about his lying reporting. It sounds ridiculous when you actually start to think it through, but Brent is right. This is where they're taking us.
Well, and what comes to my mind is the word discernment. You know, we are taught, or I was taught, or Christians were taught, or Jewish people were taught, for all I know, Muslims are taught, you're supposed to discern. You're supposed to learn to judge what you see so that you can make good decisions for yourself, for your family, for your friends, for your community, for your country, for whatever. So what it really is saying is you need to be blind in one eye and make sure you don't look out of the other one. That's what this comes down to, right?
Well, with one addition I'd make, I guess, because I think at bottom, people who are promoting this whole business that you're going to keep individuals from using their judgment and you're going to keep individuals from being able to exercise any kind of discrimination in their choices and behavior, even when it's discrimination between good and bad, right and wrong, that's all going to be eliminated. I think the folks who are promoting this know good and well that human society can't survive without discrimination. But what it does when you assault individuals and intimidate them and tell them they can't discriminate is you make the powers that be in government and those who control the coercive power of government, they're the ones who are going to look out for you. And they will then tell you what you should be for and what you should be against. They become the arbiters of discrimination. And I think at the end of the day, the assault on individual rights of conscience and judgment and decision making is all being done so that you throw human beings out the window as individuals, and you have a basis for discriminating, but it's going to be a basis based on the control and dictation of the powerful few.
Now, the next story is from Chuck Todd, a avowed leftist liberal, who said Obama charging $500,000 to people who contribute to his revamped campaign committee, which now is whatever, Make America Socialist Committee, and that if they pay the $500,000, they get dinner with him in the White House. He said, it looks bad. Really? I'll be doggone. I guess that's discriminating, but it just amazes me, the hypocrisy, the arrogance. I mean, it's almost like Michelle showing up at the Oscars, although she does resemble the statue, other than for the width of her posterior. It just amazes me how these people could say, do as I say, not as I do, and we're not supposed to discern, discriminate, notice. I'll start with you, Brent.
Well, I think that you characterized it properly, that it's a message to the people that you're not supposed to discern. It's a message to the people. It's not a message that they expect 100% of the people to absorb. You, Alan, me, we are the ones who slip through the control cracks. They're not seeking to control us. They understand that we're those people who won't be controlled. It doesn't matter to them. You know, they go on the basis that they'll pick up, between media and other government influences, they will pick up 80-85% of the people. Okay? Then they're happy. If they can get 80-85% of the people thinking a particular way, then they're going to be okay. Okay? Because the inertia created by that will give momentum to the counterproductive way of looking at the society, and you know, that's I think a lot of what's going on. It's a numbers game, and a number of us will slip through their cracks. But the question has always been, will it be enough? And honest to God, at this point, I'm not sure that it will be. So yeah, that's exactly what's going on, Stan. It's make most people stop discerning, stop thinking for themselves, stop being individuals, and the few individuals who remain won't matter.
Alan?
There is one question I would raise, though, Stan. Leaving aside at the moment that it's Obama and he's doing it for his particular agenda, who should the president invite to the White House for dinner? It's just a question. Because in the first instance, you would say to yourself, well, I think that everything that the president does, he's president 24 hours a day, according to the practice. He's assumed, therefore, at all times to, in a sense, be bearing the weight of that duty and office that he holds. And to act, by the way, as the executive. That is something that the individual who is president has to be aware of at all times. That's not true of people even on the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court as such can only act when there's a 5-member majority, right? By and large. And the Congress can only act when there's the required majority. So individuals do not bear in their person the whole authority of the legislature or the whole authority of the court. The individual who occupies the White House bears in his or her person the whole authority of the executive branch of the United States. It's vested in them as an individual. That means 24 hours a day for the whole time they're in office. Everything they do with the public premises, the money, the house, the time, everything they do should be done in light of the public good. And I think that that's what they're swearing an oath to accept when they go into the White House. Now, you do realize, though, Stan, that somebody who is sitting there can say, well, I think that what I need to get done is good for the country. I think that my election is good for the country. I think that this or that is good for the country. And therefore, things I do that help me to build the coalition of support and strength to get these things done, those are things that are necessary to the public good. And I actually think that, formally speaking, that's a correct argument. You could make that argument. You can't say that you've just put somebody in the White House and a majority of people have affirmed that that's the individual who should be doing this duty, and then say he can't use the White House and other facilities in order to make sure that he can be effective, and being effective includes being politically effective. Can't deny this. So I think just, on the face of it, crying about how so-and-so is actually inviting people to sleep in the Lincoln bedroom because they were donors and so forth and so on, I think I would want to ask what purpose it serves and look at it overall before I react in some blanket way as to suggest that that's simply objectionable and inappropriate and so forth, because I think the duties of president are 24-hour-a-day duties, and that making sure you have effective political support and a political base, that's very important. This is my final point in all of this, though. When I think about things like this, Stan, and sometimes I know what I say is a little counter to what folks might expect, but what I'm thinking about is the truth of the office. And the presidency has many powers and many perquisites that are necessary and essential to getting the job done. And we want to look at somebody like Obama sitting right here and go, oh my gosh, what's he doing? Because he's making such poor and bad use of them. But this is why you should never let somebody like this near the powers of the presidency. The fact is that, leave aside what he's doing with the Lincoln bedroom. Look at what he's doing with our military. Look at what he's doing with our foreign policy. Look at what he's doing with the money of the people of the United States. This man is a one-man destructive assault on our whole way of life. And the way to deal with making sure this isn't going to happen is not to say, this is picket this and picket that. No, never, never, never should we have allowed in 1,000 years anybody of this stripe who had the background and the animus and the deep resentment that he and his wife have shown. A woman who is actually out there in one of these internet things that has gone viral at a ceremony saying of the American flag, all this over a GD flag. You know what I mean? No respect for anything that has to do with this country. I think that we are now suffering the consequences. And I pray and hope that if God is willing to show us some mercy and give us some time, that people will be warned by all that is going on now, that you must never, ever, ever again take that decision in the voting booth lightly and act as if you can let somebody unvetted, unexamined, unqualified, incompetent, and hateful of the United States enter into that powerful office. Because once he gets in there, he can degrade and debase a great many things and abuse a great many opportunities and powers. And that, sadly, is what I think Obama's doing.
Well, I think he's doing it better than most would ever have thought he could do it.
If I may...
Go ahead, Brad.
Dan, if I may, one other comment. I think that it would be appropriate to know what exactly goes on in those dinners. I agree with Alan that, the president can have whoever he really wants to the White House, but if the payments are giving access to the White House beyond just having dinner, if, for example, a corporation can spend $500,000 and then end up having the president's ear to promote their own corporate agenda, I'm not sure that is appropriate. Because at that point, it's a matter if you have the money and everything, you can get your agenda promoted, and that kind of defeats, the beneficent purposes of government here in the United States of America. So I do think that there's the unanswered question: what access does this dinner actually give you?
Well, it all would be resolved with something called sunlight, or if everything were told to us, if everything were made available to us, if all activity in the White House other than national security were available by a C-SPAN or some type of thing, that would be fine. But we know that there's been, on both sides of the aisle, a lot of insidiousness, to say the least. All right, I'm going to try and wrap this up, but a final comment from you, Brent, and then from Dr. Keys.
Well, my final comment is one that I've made so many times before, which is that the problems that we are having here in America are due to our abandonment of the principles that made America great in the first place. If we want to save our country, if we want to have a free and individual rights respecting society, then we've got to change what we're doing. If we don't change what we're doing, then we will continue to have all the problems that we are talking about, on this show and beyond. And so I say we need to get back to God. We need to get back to truth. We do those two things, everything else will take care of itself.
Well said. Dr. Keys?
And I think then when we talk about these things and the various abuses, and it has come up quite often in the program for the reasons I just detailed, because there are so many of them now. So many of these destructive things where the hurtfulness of activities and policies by this administration, but also by their fellow travelers in the Congress, Democrat and Republican, bankrupting the country, destroying the military, destroying the moral integrity of the people, undermining our standing and prestige in the world, hurting our friends and allies all over the place. I mean, it is the worst, I think, era in the history of American leadership across the board. And it obviously is weighted with portents of the nation's demise in a historic sense. When we're talking about this and when people draw these conclusions, I hope they remember it, Stan. That's what I was just saying. Because I think we have seen leadership get worse and worse. Because over the course of the last, well, really since Reagan left office, things have gotten worse. There has been incompetence. There has been terrible and egregious failures, like the 9/11 attack itself in the area of national security, like the collapse of our financial structures, like the instruments that destroyed the integrity of the banking system that led to them, and so forth. And nobody's been held accountable. And people have gone to the polls and reelected a lot of these same awful folks, or people who were worse. Let them get away with lying right, left, and center, whether it's Obama or Romney or anybody. Don't look at the record. Don't look at the background. Don't look for the truth. And then lament the terrible things that happen as a result. Well, now those terrible things are no longer speculation. We know that our bad judgment at the polls has consequences. And I think that people all over should be saying, I'm going to do my level best, both myself and in every way that I can influence people, to make sure that we don't abuse our responsibility as citizens in this way ever again.
Well, let's hope they realize what both of you are saying, because the very future of not this country, but of this world that God made is literally on the precipice. Because if America continues to go down, and it is going down, then there's nothing to hold the world up. And we will return to exactly what Alan has talked about, where the haves, the elite, arrange this world for their benefit, and what they have on the what do they call those things in Georgia? The Georgia Guidestones will in fact come to be, that the population of this world will be culled dramatically, and this concept of God-given, endowed rights will be erased from this earth of ours. Appreciate you, Alan, always. Thank you for all you do. Thanks, Brent, for being a part of the show and being my friend for these many years. And thank you, America, for giving us some of your time. God bless. We'll see you in a week.